Everybody, if you're wondering on what is the best way of using Claude Code, I'm going to show you some various options that you have. Right, some using like Visual Studio Code, some using Obsidian plugins, and some using like different terminal based tools as well. So where most people start is they'll start off with the terminal, right? This is the default Mac terminal, and it works pretty much out of the box, right? You'd like typically a workflow here is of course you CD into your knowledge base or whatever, and then you would then launch Claude. And you pretty much get started here. So you could write down like, describe my index of files. What do I have available? And it works pretty well. But one of the things here, of course, is everything's very much keyboard based. It's very like code based. And to be honest, it's a good way to start. But unless you're a developer, it may be a bit constraining in terms of like how you're using it. So let me show you another option. The next one is kind of upgrading your terminal setup. There's also terminal apps called Ghostty. So here's one that is quite popular with developers. And this one allows you to like do things like split screen, etc. So it's quite friendly, and you can like customize the look and feel like quite well. So again, like here, what I've done, I can actually open up like multiple screens. So Command D, open up another one, launch Claude again here. And you can kind of like get stuff done on the go, right? So you can Option Command switch to this one, so describe what I have to do today, and then on the right hand side I could be like, okay, let's start working on my Shopify website for BBG, and you can kind of like get multiple things done at the same time, right? So this is kind of like this one. The next way you can do things is actually using like Visual Studio Code or Obsidian, and the advantages of this is that you're able to read your notes while you actually use Claude Code, right? So you can see here, this is Visual Studio Code, and the official Claude plugin, Claude Code plugin, basically pulls it up on the side here. So that's quite useful, right? So I could just open Claude Code, and it's gonna like automatically launch in the vault structure that I have, which I use for like all my personal notes, all my work notes, client notes, all this kind of stuff, right? So I can like just directly start talking within this, and I can also add specific files or refer to files that are open, right? So I could write like what are the similarities between and then I'm gonna actually like, you see like the UI is generally quite nice, right? It's not like so code heavy or like keyboard heavy. I can actually use my mouse, which is cool. Between this and I don't know, like let's look up some like note taking, like the note taking fallacy, right? And again, it's got the same kind of thing, so bypass permissions, etc. And I could have this done, and then I could also open another tab and get something else like worked on as well, right? So it's quite useful this way to actually work with a plugin within like Visual Studio Code. And like I know a lot of people do this as well, because you could browse like your files while also like using Claude Code. And the same goes for Obsidian. So a lot of people also use Obsidian, and it's generally the same thing. Right, but there are some advantages of Obsidian, because it's like natively designed for like note taking, which means that the links between files, for example, like here, I could click this and I'll go through to another node, right? So everything is kind of built for like note taking, etc. Whereas if I was in Visual Studio Code, these links don't actually link to each other, right? So this is a bit more problematic, right? But within Obsidian, again, there's like different apps for opening the terminal. So one of them is Claudian, right? So if I opened up Claudian here, you see it's here. And again, like you can add in different windows, so different tabs, sorry, so different sessions. And again, you could be like, what are some of the common problems with, I don't know, like, and then and like note taking, right? Like this kind of stuff. And you could like do a similar kind of thing as I showed you in Visual Studio Code, right? So you could add specific files, all this kind of stuff. And if you wanted to switch tabs, you totally could as well, right? So yeah, those are some of the different ways that I've been experimenting with Claude Code. To be honest, I'm switching between them all of the time. I did initially start with the terminal, although I don't really do that anymore, right? If I am going to use just terminal-based Claude Code, I will probably just use Ghostty, just because of like this multi-split screen way of working, which I think is quite useful. If I want to look at my files at the same time, I'll use Obsidian, right? Or I'll use Visual Studio Code. So a lot of the time I'll use this as well. But this is like more like when I need to like read actually like the notes that I have. I'll then use Visual Studio Code or Obsidian. But I hope that helps. Definitely try out the different ways of using Claude Code, different terminals, different tools, and yeah, let me know what you think.